Let's start with a truth that most people avoid their entire lives. You cannot awaken your divine purpose if you are still running from your shadow. Not just the shadow you show to others, but the one you hide from yourself. The part of you you'd rather pretend doesn't exist. The part that feels ugly, broken, ashamed, angry, jealous, selfish, lost. That part. That's the gateway. That's the doorway. That's the map. You don't transcend it, you integrate it. And until you do, you will keep hitting the same invisible wall over and over again. You will read every book, follow every guru, chant every mantra, and still feel like something is missing. Because something is missing, and it's the one thing you've been taught to fear, your own shadow. Now, you might be wondering, why would embracing the darkest, rawest parts of ourselves be necessary for awakening? Isn't the path of light about rising above, about being pure and radiant and love-filled? That's the illusion. That's the trap. Real spiritual awakening is not about becoming perfect, it's about becoming whole. And you cannot be whole if you are at war with half of yourself, especially the part that has been silently running the show from the background. The shadow doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. It gets louder. It drives your relationships. It sabotages your dreams. It whispers lies like, you're not enough, or you'll be abandoned if people see the real you. And the more you try to suppress it, the more power it gains. Chosen ones, listen closely. You were not sent here to escape the human experience. You were sent here to transform it, to alchemize the pain, the fear, the trauma, not just in your own life, but in the collective. And you can't alchemize what you won't face. This is why the first reason we must embrace the shadow is that it holds the codes to our power. The very things you've been running from are often the exact wounds that shaped your divine assignment. Your deepest pain is the blueprint for your highest service. The wound is the womb, but only if you're willing to go into it. I know, it's not easy. Most of us have spent years building identities designed to protect us from ever feeling those old wounds again. We became achievers, pleasers, rebels, perfectionists. These masks helped us survive, but they also disconnected us from our essence. And here's the paradox. The longer you wear the mask, the more you forget it's a mask. You start to believe that this version of you, this filtered, curated, guarded self, is who you really are. But deep down, you know it's not. You feel the dissonance. You feel the hollowness. And that discomfort, that sacred discomfort, is the second reason why chosen ones must embrace the shadow. Discomfort is the compass. It's the soul's way of guiding you back to what you've been avoiding. The more uncomfortable it feels, the closer you are to the breakthrough. Let me ask you something that might pierce right through your current reality. What if the part of you you're most ashamed of is the part of you that holds your greatest gift? Think about that. Sit with that. Because the shadow isn't just darkness. It's unlived potential, repressed creativity, buried truth, passion that was labeled too much, intuition that was dismissed, rage that was never allowed to roar. And when you begin to embrace it, not indulge it, not act it out, but witness it with love, something miraculous happens. The third reason becomes clear. The shadow is the bridge to your authenticity. When you stop pretending to be what you think the world wants and start revealing who you really are, your energy shifts. Your vibration changes. People feel it. You stop attracting situations that reflect your unworthiness and start magnetizing experiences that match your truth. But make no mistake, shadow work is not a trend, and it's not for the faint of heart. It's raw. It's messy. It's holy. It requires sitting in the fire of your own discomfort without trying to escape. It means facing the parts of your past you swore you'd never revisit. It means grieving for the innocence lost, for the masks worn, for the time wasted. But grief is sacred. It creates space. It clears the old to make way for the real. This is the fourth reason embracing the shadow is essential. It purifies your inner space so your light can expand. Not the artificial light of performance or spiritual bypassing, but the grounded light of someone who has met their darkness and made peace with it. And what happens when you do that? When you stop hiding from yourself, you become dangerous, but in the most beautiful way. Not to others, but to the systems that feed on fear, control, and conformity. Because now, you can't be manipulated. You've reclaimed your power. You've reclaimed your narrative. And this brings us to the fifth reason. The shadow holds the keys to your sovereignty. You no longer need approval to feel worthy. You no longer need to be liked to feel lovable. You're no longer driven by unconscious patterns you're choosing consciously from your center. Chosen ones, this is the path. It's not about escaping the world, it's about becoming so rooted in your truth that you change the world simply by being who you are. But you cannot do that if you're still afraid of your own reflection. If you're still running from the things you swore you'd never look at. This is the initiation. This is the threshold. And the longer you delay it, the longer you delay your own liberation. So the question is no longer, do I have a shadow? The question is, am I ready to meet it? And not just meet it, but embrace it like the long-lost part of my soul it truly is. Because if you are, everything changes.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
There comes a moment on the path of the chosen one when the light alone is no longer enough. The affirmations stop working. The vision boards feel hollow. The spiritual highs begin to fade. And in that stillness, when you can no longer pretend that light is all there is, you begin to feel it. The pull, the weight, the gravitational force of your own shadow calling you inward, deeper, lower. And though it may feel like a descent, what you're actually entering is a sacred classroom. Because while the light may inspire you, it is the shadow that educates you. It is your greatest spiritual teacher, not because it makes you feel good, but because it makes you real. You see, the shadow doesn't care about your ideals. It doesn't care about your image. It doesn't care about your carefully curated version of enlightenment. It cares about truth, and truth is rarely convenient. It strips away illusions. It exposes your contradictions. It shows you the parts of yourself you wished no one would ever see. But it also shows you something else, something most people miss. It shows you your depth, your capacity for transformation, your raw, unpolished humanity. And that's where the sixth reason comes in. The shadow becomes your teacher because it reveals the terrain of your soul. It shows you what you're made of beneath the surface. It teaches you what no book can. It teaches you through direct experience, through heartbreak, through failure, through longing, through shame, and then, once you've sat with all of it, through grace. The shadow doesn't lecture. It initiates. It forces you to face what you've projected onto others. It shows you how the enemy you hate, the lover you resent, the parent you blame all reflect a part of you that still aches to be seen. The more you reject them, the more you reject yourself. But when you lean in, when you own it, when you say, yes, that lives in me too, something profound happens. The war ends. The internal fragmentation begins to heal. You stop splitting yourself into good and bad, light and dark, spiritual and human. And in that fusion, you begin to taste wholeness not as a concept, but as a felt truth. Let me ask you something radical. What if the person you judge the most is actually carrying a message from your own soul? That's the kind of question the shadow makes you ask. It makes you uncomfortable, not because it's wrong, but because it's real. The shadow trains you to hold paradox, to admit that you can be both wise and wounded, that you can love deeply and still carry rage, that you can be a vessel of light and still be healing lifetimes of density. That's the mark of a spiritually mature being, not someone who dances with it, who learns from it, who bows to it as part of the whole. And here's where things get even more mystical. When you stay with your shadow long enough, when you show up consistently with compassion instead of judgment, it begins to change form. It softens. It reveals its origin story. The fear that looked like sabotage was actually protection. The jealousy that looked like toxicity was actually a cry for recognition. The numbness was a survival mechanism. The anger was a boundary you weren't allowed to have. And suddenly you realize something. Your shadow has been loving you this whole time. It just didn't know how to speak your language. And that realization is the turning point. This is the seventh reason the chosen ones must embrace the shadow to awaken. Because the shadow, once integrated, becomes your ally. It doesn't go away, it gets converted. The parts of you that were once reactive become intuitive. The parts that were once destructive become creative. The energy that was once suppressed becomes liberated. And that's when you stop fearing your darkness. That's when you stop trying to fix yourself. You realize there was never anything wrong with you. There was only fragmentation. And now there is fusion. So when people ask me, what's the fastest way to awaken? I always say, stop running from what you don't want to feel. Stop gaslighting yourself with positivity. Stop chasing transcendence and start embodying your humanity. Because when you face your own shadow, you become fearless. Not in the absence of fear, but in the presence of clarity. You know who you are. You know what you carry. And no one can use your darkness against you anymore because you've already made peace with it. This is the inner eclipse, the moment when your light and your shadow meet in sacred union. And what emerges from that union is not a more perfect version of you, it's a more honest one, a more grounded one, a more magnetic one. Not because you shine brighter, but because you no longer hide the dark. And that, chosen ones, is the beginning of true power. There is a moment in every chosen one's journey when the darkness no longer feels like an enemy, but a well deep, ancient, and full of untapped energy. At first, the abyss seems like a place of loss, of spiritual death. You fall into it thinking you've failed, thinking you've gone backwards. But what if I told you the abyss is not your undoing, it's your unveiling? The void you fear isn't there to destroy you. It's there to strip away everything that is not you. And when you finally stop resisting, when you surrender to it fully, a miracle begins. Your darkness becomes your fuel. This is the sacred alchemy that no one talks about in mainstream spirituality. Everyone wants the light. Everyone wants bliss, ascension, clarity. But very few are willing to sit in the raw mess of their own shadow long enough to realize that buried inside it is pure power. The kind of power that is not borrowed, not taught, not inherited, but earned through presence, through perseverance, through facing your inner abyss and saying, I'm not afraid of you anymore. That is the moment when the fire starts to burn differently. It doesn't consume you, it refines you. When you're in the abyss, everything gets loud. The voices of doubt, the echoes of your past, all the things you thought you had healed come crashing back. And that's not because you're broken or going backwards, it's because the deeper the transformation, the more thorough the purge. The shadow brings everything to the surface not to shame you, but to liberate you, to show you what you're still carrying so you can transmute it. This is where the alchemy begins. And it's not poetic, it's messy. It's crying on the floor. It's confronting your inner critic. It's reliving the moment you were abandoned, betrayed, violated, and feeling it fully, without numbing, without bypassing. Because only in that full presence does the energy begin to change form. Let me ask you something only your soul can answer honestly. What pain have you been carrying that you've never let yourself fully feel? That's the doorway. Not the affirmations, not the crystals, not the good vibes only. The doorway is hidden inside the pain you've been avoiding. And when you go there with compassion, with breath, with presence, you begin to reclaim the energy that's been trapped for years. That's the alchemy. You take your grief and turn it into empathy. You take your rage and turn it into boundaries. You take your shame and turn it into truth. You recycle your darkness into light, not by pretending it's not there, but by honoring it as part of your sacred journey. You begin to realize that the abyss is not a place you fall into, it's a place you rise from. Every great teacher, every enlightened being, every sacred warrior has faced their own inner hell, and they didn't escape it. They entered it with their eyes open, and they emerged with gold. The gold of self-awareness, the gold of embodied wisdom, the gold of knowing who they are, not because someone told them, but because they remembered in the fire. That's the kind of power the world cannot give you, and it cannot take away. The chosen ones are not those who have never fallen into the abyss. They're the ones who built temples there, who mapped the terrain, who came back with the medicine. This is why your darkness matters. This is why you must not run from it. Because the very thing you think disqualifies you is what qualifies you to lead, to guide, to heal, not from theory, but from embodiment. People don't trust perfection. They trust truth. And truth is born in the depths. So the next time you feel the pull of the abyss, don't resist. Lean in. Let it teach you. Let it empty you. Let it break the parts of you that were never real, so that what remains is unshakable. Let it burn away the opinions, the roles, the stories. Let it show you that what you thought was darkness was actually density, and density can be transmuted. It can be lightened. It can be used. The most awakened beings are not those who live above the world. They're the ones who have lived through it and chosen to shine anyway, who have taken every ounce of pain and turned it into fuel for their mission. And that's what you're here to do. You're not here to be untouched by suffering. You're here to transform it so that others know it can be done. That's the gift of the chosen one, not to avoid the abyss but to illuminate it from the inside. By now, you've walked through the fire. You've looked into the mirror of your soul and seen both the light and the dark staring back. You've been cracked open by your own honesty, pierced by truths you once buried, and reborn through the power of your willingness to feel it all. And now, something extraordinary is beginning to happen. You are no longer swinging between extremes. You are no longer trying to escape one part of yourself and cling to another. Instead, you are becoming whole. Living as a fully integrated light shadow being means standing in the center of your humanity and your divinity at the same time, and knowing that both are sacred. This is where the true awakening begins. Not in escaping the world, but in embodying your truth within it. You begin to walk with a different kind of presence. You don't speak from a pedestal, you speak from experience. You don't preach from a textbook, you share from your scars. And because you've met no darkness and made peace with it, you carry a light that doesn't flicker when the storm comes. You become unshakable. Not because you never fall, but because you know how to rise. Not because you're always calm, but because you no longer fear your chaos. You've seen what you're made of. You've seen what lives beneath the masks, and you've chosen to love yourself anyway. That is the mark of a chosen one, not perfection, but integration. You've stopped outsourcing your power to gurus, to systems, to external validation. You've reclaimed your voice, your path, your knowing. And now, every step you take carries the weight of your journey. Every word you speak carries the vibration of someone who has earned their truth. You become a mirror reflecting to others what is possible when we stop fragmenting ourselves and start embracing all of who we are. Let me ask you one final question, the kind that echoes through lifetimes. What would your life look like if you no longer apologized for your shadow or your light? That's the doorway to liberation. Imagine living without guilt for being powerful, without shame for being sensitive, without fear of being seen in your full, raw, multidimensional expression. That's not fiction, that's your birthright. To live as a being who has integrated their darkness, who has transmuted their wounds into wisdom, and who now walks this earth not to prove anything but to serve something greater. And the greatest service you can offer this planet is your presence, your wholeness, your truth. But here's the twist. Integration is not a one-time event. It's a daily practice. It's how you respond when your old wounds are triggered. It's how you show up when fear wants to take the wheel. It's how you hold yourself when no one else understands your path. Living as a fully integrated being means entering each moment as both student and teacher, both human and soul. It means no longer labeling your emotions as good or bad, but reading them like sacred messages. It means trusting that even your mess has medicine in it. And as you live this way, raw, real, whole, you become medicine for others too. Not because you have all the answers, but because you're no longer pretending to. You're not trying to be the light. You are the light because you've been through the dark and you've chosen love anyway. You've chosen truth. You've chosen presence. That choice made again and again is your awakening. You see, The world doesn't need more perfect people. The world needs more authentic souls who have done the inner work, who have faced their own shadows so they can hold space for others, who have turned their pain into compassion, their fear into courage, their doubt into clarity. That's what it means to be a chosen one. That's what it means to be the unshakable flame. You do not flicker in the wind. You do not hide in the dark. You burn steadily, fiercely, lovingly, and in your light, others remember their own. This is the path. This is the work. This is the gift. You have arrived. Welcome home.